Hi everyone, my name is Mustafa. Welcome to today's edition of Migrating MySQL data to Cloud SQL using Database Migration Service. For today, we are exploring migrating MySQL user data when running Database Migration Service job. An overview of this lab, we know that Database Migration Service, it provides a high fidelity way to migrate MySQL database objects from the source database instance to a destination database instance. And when a user runs a database migration jobs, all tables from the database and schemas are migrated, with the exception of the system database, which are like the sys, the MySQL, the performance underscore schema, and the information underscore schema. So MySQL system database, they are not migrated during the database migration service job, like we mentioned above, and they contain information about the users and privileges. So you can manage users and privileges in the destination database. In this case, we are migrating from MySQL to a Cloud SQL database instance. So we can set up the users after we've created it in the Cloud SQL database. Objects that contain metadata defined with the definer clause will fail, or they can fail when invoked on the destination instance if the user associated with the definer clause does not already exist in the destination instance. To make this more clearer, definer and invoker are two terms used to refer to the user who created a stored procedure or function. So definer is used to refer to the user who created a stored procedure or function in the database, and the user is who is currently executing it. So more broadly, a definer is a user who created a stored procedure or function. The definer privilege are used to determine what the stored procedure or function can do. For example, if the definer has a create table privilege, then the stored procedure or function can create table, which is just what I explained above. Meanwhile, for the invoker, invoker is the user who is currently executing the stored procedure or function. And the invoker privilege are only used to determine what the stored procedure or function can do if the stored procedure or function is using the invoker right. So that is how the definer and the invoker intercept themselves. So typically, to prevent errors when these objects are invoked on the destination instance after migration, you can either create the necessary users on the MySQL destination instance so that all the users associated with the definer clause are present in the destination instance, or you can update the definer clauses to invoke you can update the definer clauses to invoker on the MySQL source instance, and this would ensure that the security privilege used to access the data on the destination instance are set to privileges for user running the query rather than privileges for the user who defined the objects. You can update the definer clauses to invoker on the MySQL source instance. This would ensure that the security privilege used to access the data on the destination instance are set to the privileges for the user running the query rather than the privileges for the user who defined the object. So that's the motive of updating definer clauses to invoker clauses on the MySQL instance. For this lab, we'd learn how to ensure that your Cloud SQL for MySQL instance contain the relevant user metadata that was available on the MySQL source instance by completing the two steps that we outlined above. The first one, which will be identify the existing MySQL user on the source instance and update the definer clauses to invoker for the database object on the source instance. The second thing we are going to do is we'll create and save a database migration service job before running the migration job, and we can create the necessary users on the destination database. So after we've done that, we can now start the saved migration job, and after the job runs successfully, you would see that the user metadata is now in the Cloud SQL for the MySQL instance. So an high level objective of this lab is to identify existing MySQL user on the source instance, update definer clauses to invoker on the MySQL source instance, create and save a database migration service job without starting the job, Then we'd create users on the Cloud SQL destination instance. Then we would start a previously created database migration service job, and thereafter we can now check the user data in the Cloud SQL destination instance. So as usual, let's get started. We'll start our lab. Click on My Robot. So I'll launch this lab with credits. So after starting our lab, we can open in an incognito window with the details that are given us. Here's our password. Is your password here? Then I understand. Here's my console launching up. Here's my Google Cloud console. So I'll agree to the terms and service, then agree and continue. After that, for the first part of this lab is the setup. So we've just gone over the setup. After setting up, we would activate our Cloud Share. So to activate our Cloud Share, we use the gcloud auth list command and the gcloud config list project. So let's see. Here is our Cloud Share. Let's activate it. We continue here. So you can see it is provisioning our Cloud Share machine, and after it's done, we would connect to our Cloud Share instance. So we are done. So let's authenticate our Cloud Share. We authorize this. So and after that, we use the gcloud config list project. So you can see our project is this, which shows that we've configured our project, which is fine. The next thing we want to do after that is to verify that database migration API is actually enabled, and if it's not, we would have to enable it by ourselves. And after that, we also verify that the service networking API is also enabled, and if not, we would enable it by ourselves. So we'll just do a search here for the database migration API. So here we are. You can click on it. After clicking on it, you can see that this is not enabled, because if it's enabled, it's going to show a check mark here, and you have an option to disable. But since we have an option to enable, it is not enabled. So I'll enable it. It's enabling at the moment. And you can see it is now enabled, so we have an option to disable. So I'll go. If we are unable to see it there, you can just click on enabled API and service, and you can search for the API and service here. Just service and network API from here directly, and you can see it here from here. When you click on it, then it is also not enabled. We will have to enable it by ourselves. So please make sure you go through this step, because don't just assume that it has been enabled for you, because if it's not enabled previously like this one, we would now be able to go forward in the lab, and you'll be getting error when you're trying to configure some services. So enable your database migration API and your service networking API. So we are good. Next thing we want to do is we want to identify, and that's our task one. We want to identify the existing MySQL user on the source instance. We are migrating, we are doing a database migration, and for a migration there have to be an existing source, and there have to be a new destination or an existing destination we want to do. So this is our existing source database, which is on MySQL, and now we are migrating it to Cloud SQL from MySQL. So we are migrating, and that will be our destination. So this is our existing source, and let's identify the existing MySQL user on the source instance database. So to do that, the MySQL source that we are using is deployed on Compute Engine. So the first thing we have to do is we have to first SSH into the database, and after we SSH into the database, then we have to connect to the MySQL interactive console using this command, the MySQL_u. This is the user, the admin, and the password. Let's go. To do that, go to the navigation menu. From your computer engine, go to virtual machines. When you're on virtual machine, this is the lab, this is the instance that hosts our database. You can decide to SSH into it. So when I SSH into this database and I authorize the SSH key, so it's establishing connection to my SSH server, and now we are here. So try to attempt into my database, then I'll use the password, which is the password that was used before when this thing was deployed. So now I'm in my database, and you can see this is the MySQL. I'm inside my database instance. So the next thing I want to do is to identify the existing MySQL users, because we said we want to see the existing users that are there. So for that, we'll use this SQL command, which is the select. You select the host, select the user, select the authentication string for the MySQL user. This is like the table schema, and would order by the user column. So on this, and you can see we have different hosts. These are the hosts that we have in this database. We have the host, this is the user, and this is the authentication string. So out of all these ones, some of them are system database. Example is this Debian and this MySQL.session. So we don't really need them, because in this case they are system users that are set by default. So they are not part of what we are concerned with, and we have to like take them away. And that is the explanation that is going here. So these users, the Debian, the MySQL, and the MySQL session and MySQL.sys, they are users that don't need to be created, as they are created by MySQL as needed when the destination instance is created. So we don't need to create them on the destination instance we are migrating to at all. So we would want a modified query that is going to exclude these two. So what this SQL is doing, the only difference from this one and the previous one is that in this case now we are excluding when a user has a keyword like MySQL, so which is going to eliminate these two, and user not like Debian, when it also has something like this, is going to eliminate it. So it's only for users that are not like this and that are not like this that are going to show. So you can copy this command, paste it here, click on enter. You can see it has reduced the response from 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 to just 7 rows. Now it has excluded the 3 that we want to exclude, which is the MySQL session, MySQL sys, and the Debian sys maintenance. So that's what we want. The next thing we want to do is you can review the list, review that, and you can see from there that all users except for the admin and roots have the localhost access. So all users have localhost access except the admin and roots, which is fine. So we have to create these roots when you create a new database service migration job, but we would create the other users in a later task after the Cloud SQL destination has been created for the migration job. So typically that's all for task 1. It identify the existing MySQL users on the source instance. The next thing, which is the next step, is to update the definer to INVOKER on the MySQL source instance. So those with definer permission, we want to update it to the INVOKER, which is just like now letting the user who is currently executing it as the privilege and not the person who defined those stored procedure function. So for that, we would identify the object with the definer entries or with the definer privileges. And to get that, we would select the table schema, would select the table name from. So you can typically have that from the information schema.column. You can have it from information schema.column. You can have it from the events. You can have it from the routines. You can have it from the triggers, and you can have it from the views. That's where you can see the definer entries. So, but for a start, we'll first check from the information schema.columns, and let's see those with definer entries, and then outline them at first. So put this, so run this here, and let's try on enter. You can see. So we have when you select the table name, the schema, where the column name equals to definer. So these are the information that it returns for us. So we have to check the information schema event, information schema routine, information schema triggers, information schema dot views, and that is where we can see people who have the definer entries in the database. So we would now be checking into them one by one, and you can see that now we are accessing information schema dot event, because from here it returned the event table name. So let's do that one by one. Cost to enter. So this returned an empty set, which shows that there is no definer clauses or definer privilege here at the moment, so which is fine. We would also run it for the next one, but in this case now we would change the event to routines, because now we are checking for routines. So you can just copy the correct command from the previous one, since it's a new line. So I'll just hit on enter, and I'm going to just copy the previous command. So it's still the same. This is just still the same command like the above, but now I'll copy the one for the routines. So you can see it's information schema dot routines. Copy and like and paste here. So we also have an empty set, that means no definer entries here. Click on the next one again, and make sure that we are only concerned with non-system users, because from this command we've excluded the system users, which is this MySQL sys, MySQL admin, and the Debian sys maintenance, which are what we exclude here. So because we are not concerned about the system users, we are only concerned about the non-system users. So this is also an empty set. And the next one, it is the views. Just click on that and paste it here. You can enter. Yeah, so under the views now we have some definer entries, we have some definer privileges here, and since we have some definer privileges here, we have to now look at the one that we want to exclude, or the one we want to change to the invoker rights. So when you review all these ones, you would notice that most of the users here, there are some users there that will not be created in the destination instance. So because that user will not be created in destination instance, we have to update the definer clause for that user to invoker. So when we update it to invoker in the next step, we are not going to have issues. So notice that one of the previously identified users, which is this D Williams, is not associated with any of the definer entries. So when we take a look at some of the users before, we have like D Williams. From here, you can see there's D Williams here, but he is not associated with any definer clause at the moment. So which means we don't have anything to do for that particular one. And you should also notice that there are no instance of definer for the root action. So we don't need to operate any action for D Williams or root, because they don't have any case of definer here. You can see that these are the users that we have here. We have admin, B Smith, D Williams, M Hill, and root, and there are no cases of definer for D Williams and root, so we don't need to perform any extra action. The only action we have to perform has to go to the admin, B.S. Smith, and M.H. and M. Hills, which is what we are going to do. And because we are going to create the admin user and the B. Smith user on our destination instance, we don't necessarily need to change the permission to invoker. But because we are not going to create a user for M use on our destination instance, then in that case we have to change the permission from definer to invoker, so that's not going to cause failure. And that's the explanation here. So we are only going to alter the permission for MH use alone. So copy this command, and this command is going to target this MH use here. So what this SQL is doing is that selecting the definer, select the security type, select the table schema, select the view definition from the information schema underscore views, where the table name is equal to this one, and you can see the table name. This is the table name we are interested in, because we only want to alter the one for M use at localhost. So strike on enter. So after you strike on enter, these are the permission. These are what we have. These are what we have here. We have the invoice, store number, as this, as that. And now we want to alter the security type. We want to alter it from definer to invoker. So the command we are going to use is, you have to first enter into the database. So the database that this thing is on, when you take a look at it, the table schema is sales data. So we are majorly now concerned. Now we've been exploring the information schema. Now we want to explore a specific table. So we are going to go into this sales data, which is the table data name, and that is why we are using this command to use sales data. Let me strike on the use sales data. Now we are inside the new database, which is the use sales data. So when we are inside the new database, then we have to run a command to update the definer to invoker for the view. You know, that user is set. He has a definer privilege, and I want to change it to invoker. So click on this command. So what this command is going to do is going to alter the security type from invoker. It's going to alter the security type from definer to invoker, and that is why we are saying alter SQL security invoker view. So this is the table name as select star from invoices where store number equals to what, 3656. Okay, let's do that. Strike on enter. So you can see the query is okay and it has run successfully. So the next thing we want to do is we want to review the definer entries also, and we want to now check if really it has changed from definer to invoker. So that's the previous command, like the one we ran just here. The previous command, like the one we ran here. It's the same thing as this one that we are running now again. So when we click on enter, and you can now see from here that this use the security type has changed to invoker. Just here it was still a definer, but since we are not going to create that user in the destination, you have to change the security type for it to invoker, so that it's not going to cause error. And here you can see the changes have been effected. Okay, so this still remains the same, but we are going to create those users in the destination source, in the destination database in the later step. So that's not an issue. So you can terminate your session, and we'll now go ahead and create our migration job. So just exit this. So we are back on our Google Cloud dashboard. So you can check if you've completed this task. You should have completed it. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to create and save a database migration job without starting it. So we just create the job and save it without starting it. So to create the migration job, we need the internal IP of the source migration job. So this is our source migration job. You can get the internal IP from here. This is the internal IP. So I can copy it down, but I can just duplicate this tab. So when I need it, I can come back here. So I have my internal IP here, I have my external IP. You can copy it and maybe save it in a safe place. But I'm just going to duplicate it, and I can come back and have it during this tab. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create a new connection profile for the MySQL source instance. So if you've been following our database migration videos, you'd notice how we typically create a migration job. So the first thing we'll do, you have to create a connection profile for it. So go back here, go to our database migration. This is database migration. Then we have the connection profile. Under the connection profile, we create a profile. The database engine will be a MySQL. So we would use the details that are specified for us in this lab. So the connection profile here is from MySQL to the virtual machine. The next thing, this one is auto-generated. The host name we are using here will be the host name of the host name or IP address will be the IP address of the source instance that we have here, this internal. After copying it from here, come back here and paste it here. For the username, copy the username they give us, which is admin, and the password change me. So when you are doing this in production, you typically have to use your own value. This is just to like demo an example of what we are going to do here. So for the encryption type, you select none, and we can now create your connection profile. So it's creating our connection profile, and you can see that our connection profile for MySQL to the virtual machine has been successfully created. So after we've created our connection profile, we can now create the migration job. So you typically come here and create our migration job now, and that's just the next instruction here. So we would want to create the one-time migration job. So let's see. So I've gone to migration job, so I have to use the details that are specified. So this is from the virtual machine instance to our Cloud SQL destination, because we are migrating from a MySQL database on virtual machine, on a computer new virtual machine, to a Cloud SQL instance for MySQL. So this is our migration job name. Create a migration job. Our job name, we put our job name, so the job ID gets auto-generated. The source database is MySQL also. The migration job type, it's a one-time, not in a continuous here. And after that, you would click save and continue. Yeah, very good. So we have to also define the source instance. So for the source instance would be the profile that we use. So the profile that we created, the connection profile would be our source profile here. So, and you can see it's the only one that is here. So we have it. If you've created more, you have option to choose for more. So save and continue. You can see that you can see the logic behind creating a connection profile before starting the migration job. So for the destination, we have to have our destination also, and our destination is now the Cloud SQL. So don't use the auto-generated something here, because this is really we want our destination ID to be quite descriptive. So now we are moving from MySQL to Cloud SQL. For the password, super secrets. Then our database version, we want Cloud SQL for MySQL, the 5.7 version. Choose that. Enterprise, enough. Under the zones, we want to use any, which is pre-selected for us. So we also have to select the private IP and the public IP part. So this is just leave this as the default. Select the public IP. So we also want to use an automatically allocated IP range. So you can just allocate and connect. So it's going to take a few minutes while it's allocating. I'll fast forward it and see at the end. Then successfully allocated the network that we want here. So for this, you can, for the machine type, you can just leave this as default. You want to use standard one, so it's fine. We want to use an SSD. The storage capacity 10 gigabytes is enough, and after that you can create and continue. So let's create the destination and continue. So successfully, it's also going to take a while for this destination to be done. So let's define how you want to connect the method. So we want to connect to VPC pairing. Let's see if that's what they want us to use. Okay, so we want to use VPC pairing, and for this VPC we select the default, but typically we still have to wait for this guy to finish before this configure and continue instance will become clickable. Our connection method has been successfully done. Then we can click on configure and continue. After clicking on configure and continue, just know that some of this process takes a while for them to be done. I'll be fast forwarding and going to the end, but during your time, just take your time and allow it to finish. So you don't necessarily have to test the job, because testing the job does not really give the results here for this case, because it's just a one-time migration job. But we can just we can go ahead and test and let's see if it works. But the job can test and work, and sometimes you notice the error for this type of job, but I still test it. So our testing is good. So we create the job. You notice that we are going to create the job without starting it because we still have to configure some stuff in the MySQL side of things on Cloud SQL before we now start the job. So just going to create the job and exit this. I'm waiting for it to get created, finish. So I can see our migration job has been successfully created and it has not been started, which is what we want. Okay, so we are typically done with this step. Let's check we've completed this. So this assessment is also complete. The next thing we want to do is to create the necessary users on the Cloud SQL destination instance. So those users that we did not change their rights from definer to invoker, we have to create them on the Cloud SQL so that it's not going to cause failure. So the next thing we are going to do is we go to our Cloud SQL instance and create those users. So from the navigation menu under your SQL, click on your SQL. This is this is the profile for our destination instance that we are going to use. So you can click on this one. So here we have, click on the users. So we have only root user at the moment. So we have to also create the users, create those two other users that we want to create for. So first one, which is the BS Smith or the B Smith, and the other one which is the admin. Okay, so root is created for us by default already. Okay, paste this guy here for the password. So these are just the generic password for this lab, because all these things are not going to be useful after the duration of this lab. The resources are going to be closed. So for the host name, restrict hosts by IP address or host range. We are going to specify a host range, just use localhost, because the BS Smith, they have the localhost stuff from the source database. So we're going to add this. We'll add a new user, and this time we're adding the admin. Password, change me. And this one would allow for many hosts. You can click on add. So you've added those two other users that we did not change their rights from definer to invoker. Okay, so let's check if we've completed this progress. Yeah, so we've completed this step and we can move on. So for task 5, we have to run the previously created migration job. So when we want to run the previously migrated job, so this running, it typically maybe takes some time. Sometimes it takes maybe 9 minutes, sometimes it takes lesser, depending on maybe the connection or how heavy the server is at that particular time, or the kind of migration that you are even doing. So for this, we are going to go back to the job that we created, and now we are going to start it. So we have to go back to our database migration. On our database migration, just go back to the migration jobs. So you can either start it for me by clicking on this one and clicking start. So when you start from here, you can check the status here while you are starting. So you can see it's now starting. So it's going to be changing. It's going to be changing status till you finally get to completed. From starting, it's going to go to running. From running, it has some different stages in running. Then after that, it's going to go to completed. So like I said, it may take a while. I'll fast forward it and see at the end. So as you can see, the migration job has been completed. It took about 9 minutes for this thing to get completed. So when I fast forwarded it, and now we are at the end. So take your time doing your own migration. So the next thing I want to do is I want to check this progress and see if we've actually completed this. And you can see that the task is complete. So for the last task, which is the task 6, we want to confirm the user metadata in the Cloud SQL for MySQL. So let's confirm if what we really did actually showed there. So to do that, we have to connect into our destination now. Now we are not concerned about the source because we've migrated. So let's go to the destination and see that the values are actually where we want it to be. So just enter into it. So when you're in there, you go down, and you connect with the database. So you can connect from here directly. It's supposed to pre-populate a syntax that we are going to run. And yeah, here's our pre-populated syntax. So we are logging in with the user, with the root user, and authorize this. So you can see it's allowed listening our IP connection. It's trying to connect into our database for the Cloud SQL. So enter our password. So the password we used previously, which was super secret, when we were setting the lab, press it there, click on enter. So now we are also inside our database, which is our MySQL database on Cloud SQL. So let's review some of what we reviewed the previous time and see if we can get the information. So let's select this thing to call the users, and the users that we're interested in should not be system users like the MySQL sys, the MySQL admin, and the Debian system maintenance that we had before. So now you can see this root was pre-created with the Cloud SQL instance, with the MySQL instance on Cloud SQL. But for the admin and bsmith, we are the one that just created that. And when we created it, we also set bsmith to have a host of localhost, and the rest to allow any IP address from any range. So, and you can see that shown here. So the next thing we want to do is we want to run the following query and see that the metadata have actually been migrated successfully like we want. So click on this, click on enter, and you can see for the admin we have the definer, for the bsmith we have the definer, and know that we did not like set this. It just migrated automatically because we've configured the users on the destination, and when they match, it's going to connect to themselves. And this is the one that we changed to INVOKER. And when we change to the INVOKER, you notice that we don't even necessarily have to set a user for that. When we change the security type to INVOKER, it just gets added automatically. So let's enter into the user sales data. Let's talk to this INVOKER and see if stuff is actually there. So let's use the sales data as a table schema. Let's use the database. So now we are on the database. Then we can select all from this table name, and let's see if we have any data. So you can see these are the data that we have there. That means the data that even came with this MHA host, everything actually got migrated successfully, and which is really what we want. So you can see why you need to update your permission from definer to INVOKER if you are not going to be creating the user in your destination database. And that's just for the user data, and that's how you can migrate the MySQL user data when you are running a database migration job. So you can typically just create the users in the destination database, but if you are not going to create the users, you have to change the permission or the security type from definer to INVOKER. So, and that's all for this lab. So we can exit this task and exit our database. So exit the shell also. Now we are out of the shell. We can confirm if we've actually done this, and that's confirmed. We can take a look at our score, and we should have a complete score by now. So we have a complete score. We now have 60 out of 60. So Thanks very much for staying true to the end of this lab. If you enjoyed this lab, smash the like button, comment your thoughts in the comment section, and share to your loved ones. And I can't wait to see you in the next lab. Thank you for watching Migrating MySQL User Data while running Database Migration Service. See you in the next lab. Bye for now.